Starting a little bit early. Let's see here. Let's turn on some stuff. Right. Need to start the virtual camera. And there we go. So I am simulcasting on both Zoom and YouTube live stream. If you want to communicate with me, you can on Zoom. You can actually unmute yourself and say whatever you would like, or you can use the chat. And the same thing on YouTube live stream. You can use the chat. And if you haven't done so already, if you're on the YouTube live stream, smash that like button. Very important. I am broadcasting live only because I want to expose some of what we do to the general public. And the meeting, I guess, officially starts now because it is now 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock in the afternoon here on October 30th, Saturday. Very dreary day here in New England. Cold, damp, icky. And we should have more people piling in very soon, I'm sure. This is really the opportunity for members. Well, not the only opportunity, but a concentrated opportunity for members to join in on a Q&A session so that we can advance the cause that we're pursuing. And they keep on piling in. So again, the meeting itself is called a retrospective. And the retrospective is the culmination of our continuation or continuous improvement process. It's a time-boxed process that is approximately a week long. It is made up of whatever we do during the week, each individual trade, and then at the end of that week we evaluate what we did, look at what we did right, what we did wrong, what can be advanced to the next time box session or next sprint. So you look at each week as what we call a sprint. And of course we do something similar to this even during each trading event. At the end of that day, more or less evaluate what happened. But the retrospective at the end of the week is really where we bring it all together, and then also take on questions and also talk about the general strategy and where that's going. So a lot of you are new to the process, and I'm just not addressing the people that are here live. I expect as we go on, we'll probably have 20 or 30 people show up, and then as many as 40 people in and out. And then eventually, in our group, anyways, we'll probably get half to 2/3 of the people actually watching the video. I suspect that a lot of people don't even know that this happens, even though I announce it every every week. All right. So again, the retrospective is part of our service. Our service, a lot of people come to the website and think that it's all about creating alerts, and that's what they want to do. They want to get the alerts, get the trades, put them on, and then go away, and then treat us like we're some sort of black box. But that's not what the service is about at all. In fact, if that were what the service was, it would be really a very good service, because our performance compared to all the other 0DTE services is way ahead. And not just way ahead. We are at least one order of magnitude, perhaps 2 orders of magnitude ahead of any other service out there. And I'm saying that in terms of the efficiency that we use capital, and also the return that we make on the capital that we use. Our returns are literally 10 times or better than theirs. The amount of capital that we use is literally 10 times or even less, or 1/10 of what they use. The experience of the trade itself. Now, I don't know how you put a quantitative measure on it, but from a qualitative point of view, the experience is at least 10 times as great, because you are not put into a position, hardly ever, if ever, where you're anxiety ridden. That unless, you can turn anything into anxiety if you want to. So, for instance, if you decide to just trade 100 times more than what you should, you can get anxiety ridden by buying Tic Tacs, too many Tic Tacs, right? But if you follow basic risk management rules, position sizing, that sort of thing, when you compare what we do to what anybody else does, the risk that we take is minuscule compared to what they take, and we never get into one of those big risk bombs that they can get into. And additionally, now you might say, well, we're going after, does that mean we're going after smaller profit because we don't have as much risk? No. As a matter of fact, we go for much larger profit, and we're never capped by our profit like they are. They're always taking huge risk, capped at a very small amount of profit, where we take very small risk, going after a much larger chunk of profit for most of our trades, for the vast majority of them, but are not capped by that, and we have the opportunity to go after a much larger piece of the pie. And we saw that in this week's trades. So we didn't take a trade on Wednesday because, I don't think we would have taken one anyways, but in any event, I had a power outage, and I was without power for 30 hours. We took a trade on Monday, and we took a trade on Friday. Both trades, we were able to get inside the profit tent of the strategy, and had the opportunity to make anywhere from 150 to, I think, about 400% for most people on our risk. Both trades set up somewhere between $75 and $150 of risk. So anywhere from 2 to 5 times was the profit that was available to you. Now, if you put that into comparison, what other 0DTE traders are doing, in order to go after that, let's say that the average return that we were getting there, because it's somewhere between $100 and $500, was say $250. In order for them to go after $250 of profit, they would have to, and I'm talking about 0DTE.com. I'm talking about Scott Stewart. I'm talking about Axe Options. So I'm being very specific about who I'm talking about. Tammy Chambliss. Any of these people, in order to go after $250 of profit, they would have to put at risk almost $3,000. All right. That's what they would have to do. And then during their trade, based on the where we were going with our trade, for most of their trade, they would have been underwater. All right. Showing significant loss or potential loss. It was unrealized or whatever. And if they didn't stop out, they would have made that $250 as well. But they would have been capped there. And they wouldn't have made the $250, by the way, because their rules tell them to get out once they've made 50% of that $250. So they would have been putting up $3,000 to make $125. Compared to you putting up $100 or $125 to make $500, with the potential of making as much as I think as $1,000 if the strategy had pinned, but it didn't pin. I think some people actually put on their own version of the trade with the SPX, and I've read in the comments that some people actually saw the trade pin. I don't know if they held it into that realization or not. And that would have been, obviously a much or a significantly larger return. The other difference is that while we're in the trade, never are we sitting there under any significant amount of water, or never are we in unrealized loss. Usually just about even or a little bit above even, at worst maybe a few dollars down. And then once the trade starts, actually, from what I remember in Friday's trade, it was immediately into profit and then just kept on growing as time went on. So those are two very, very stark differences between the strategies. That's the strategy of the low delta, high probability trade that all the other zero DTE practitioners are doing, or the also high probability but low, we don't use delta at all, but low risk, I mean very, very small risk trade that we do. So in terms of delta, I've never looked at the delta, to tell you the truth. So I have no idea what our delta is when we get into it. I can tell you that it's probably fairly high in that our delta does not change. Well, probably, yeah, I guess fairly high, or I guess high would be the right term. Because we don't change when price, or change that much when price varies going up or down. Unlike theirs, where they have significant, not just delta risk, but gamma risk. As soon as price goes up or down in either direction, they start realizing or start getting an unrealized loss and potentially heading towards a maximum loss. I gotta turn this off. What is this thing? Let's get over here. Turn that off. So it's almost like polar opposites, the trading strategies. Complete different ends of the spectrum. Unbelievable risk for small profit, total anxiety, versus extremely small risk for a huge profit and zero anxiety. I don't know about you, but option B sounds better to me. And that's what we do. Now, if this were just an alert service, that would be great, because you come in here and you put up say $100 to make $300 on Monday and $400 on Friday. So you risk $200 total to make $500, $600, $700. That is an anomaly in options world, a complete anomaly. Most people in options would excuse the, no, I won't use that expression because we have mixed company, would be chomping at the bit to make 3 parts risk to 1 part profit. I mean, that's what most people, when they put spreads on, if they can get a 3-to-1, they're like, that is awesome. And sometimes they can even get a 2-to-1. And they think that they're, in an unbelievable position. Of course, they always take profits early because there's always that risk that they will go down the ski slope and lose everything that they've gotten. For us, we won't even take a trade unless it's a 1-to-5 risk to reward. And actually, I've loosened that a little bit to 1-to-4 while volatility is super low. And that's only so that we can widen our spreads a little bit to keep us in the game. So that if I had it at 1-to-5, we would probably have to pass on more trades. So I'm pretty sure that Wednesday I would have passed on that trade had I been able to lead the trade. So we didn't really lose anything on Wednesday. I think some people tried something, but I'm not sure what the results are. Now, as far as the strategy goes that we use, and I'm talking about the specific option strategy, we've been using mostly butterflies and broken wing butterflies. Butterflies being 2 short strikes and then 2 symmetrical strikes, or 2 symmetrical long strikes that are equidistant from the short strikes. And that would create this nice little perfect pyramid type shape with very well-defined wings. And we would do that somewhat out of the money in such a way that we would be able to create at least a 1-to-4 or 1-to-5 risk to reward. So we would be outside the money by about maybe a little bit less than the expected move. And you can't go just by expected move because we also use the volume profile to try to position the butterfly in such a way that we have a higher degree of confidence that that price is going to move towards the butterfly strategy. So we use both of those tools. We also use primarily, like I said, volume profile. The expected move gives us sort of this qualitative idea of where we can expect price to move by the end of the session. It's not, in no way is it a determining factor because expected move is so illusory. It is a statistical guess by the system that price will move or range that much during the day. It doesn't mean that that's what it will do. It doesn't mean that once it goes and meets the expected move that it's all out of gas either. It doesn't mean that at all. So you only use it and take it for what it is, and that is a qualitative idea of where you can place a strategy so that when price moves, it will intercept your strategy and put you into profit. More important is the volume profile and an understanding of how price moves between nodes and volume wells, and that all that is training inside of the course, inside of the service, so that we can make a qualitative judgment, a discretionary judgment on where we think price will go. And, so far I think that over the past year or so, I've proven that we can do that far greater than a coin flip. And in fact, we don't even need a coin flip. We can still be profitable even if we were less than a coin flip. But I've shown that we can get at least 65% of the time, and in certain volatility regimes get as high as 90%, 95% of the time. And it's important what I just said a little earlier, that it doesn't require that we even enter the profit tent of the strategy. And this is just for the the symmetrical butterfly. We put it out of the money a bit for a couple of reasons, and the biggest reason is that it reduces our risk dramatically, and it allows us to get the risk to reward that we're looking for, and it also allows us to create a wider spread, which gives us a higher probability of profit and a greater amount of premium to potentially collect. And we know that that the P&L diagram of the strategy at expiration is only a guideline. Again, that is also kind of a discretionary qualitative thing that we use in our mind. What's really of where the actual profit line is eventually going to go. But what's more important is the actual profit line at the time that we take the trade. Its shape, and its shape is usually a very shallow dome like this that will slowly rise until it takes the shape of the butterfly. That is far more important because that allows us to realize profit in a much wider range of prices. Right? I mean, that is like the key to most of this. Now that's the symmetrical butterfly. When we go to unbalanced butterflies, or let's go to a broken wing butterfly where you have non-symmetrical wings, where one wing might be a little longer than the other wing, that creates a different shape. And the shape generally that it creates is that on one side of the butterfly, it has much less risk or no risk at all, maybe even a credit. And on the other side of the butterfly, it has a much larger risk. And a lot of people ask me that, well, when we put on these broken wing flies, isn't our real risk that big risk on that other side? And I said, well, if you're looking for a technical answer, the answer is yes. That is our maximum risk. But the practical answer is no, because in order to achieve that full risk, price would have to travel all the way across the width of the fly, and you would have to be at expiration. So that's a lot of time and a lot of distance. I usually put those on in such a way that they are better than a 2 standard deviation, but usually a 3 standard deviation move would require you to be there in order to achieve that max risk, and you would have to wait until the expiration to realize it. So the answer is that practically it's virtually impossible because, first of all, you're watching the trade, and if it does move in that direction, even if it moves all at once in that same instant of time when we put it on the trade, if it moves 3 standard deviations in that same instant, you still will have not lost money because the profit curve will still be flat like this. And the most you're going to lose is maybe a couple of dollars. You might even still be in profit. So even if it does move that much, it's still not a risk. So when you see that unbalanced or that broken wing fly and you have that big risk on that other side, do not fear it. As a matter of fact, there's nothing to fear at all. And the odds are that price is going to stay on the near side where the risk is already very small anyways. And on top of that, when we talk about the profit dome, that zero time profit dome at present, when it's growing on one of those broken wing flies, so when you have the short side or the short risk on your side and the long side on the other side, when it grows, it tends to skew and grow on your side first. So it's like it bubbles up towards you, giving you even more potential for profit. I don't know if that makes sense. Probably the easiest way is to show diagrams, but I'll get to that. So there's another reason why that a broken wing fly is never anything to fear. As a matter of fact, it's usually something that we can do a little bit better with. And it gives us more flexibility in terms of the shape of the strategy and how it models our idea of where price may go and the underlying market structure and so forth, and the momentum and trend that's in place at the time. So all of those things, we put on these different strategies to model our idea of where we think price is going to go or how the market is reacting. And we do it in order to maximize our risk to reward. Now, we put that kind of risk to reward on, with the broken wing fly, we're getting a much larger risk to reward. In other words, a smaller risk and a much larger potential reward. So that means that we can put on more capital and go for a much larger reward. Now, that amount of capital that we put on is still relatively small compared to any other strategy. Now, there's a third type of butterfly that we're using, and I'm going to be detailing all of these in the course that I'm creating on butterflies, by the way. So I've started with the symmetrical. I've added some to the broken wing, and I'm going to add more to the unbalanced. The unbalanced is a completely different animal. It is like taking a broken wing butterfly and then adding to it a credit spread. So instead of the normal 1, 2, 1 in terms of the strikes, the number of strikes that we have. So in the normal broken wing or symmetrical, we have 2 strikes, 2 short strikes in the middle, and then a long strike and a long strike on either side. Either they're equidistant or they're different distances. On a unbalanced butterfly, it's just like a broken wing where we have 2 in the middle and then unequal wings, but then an additional credit spread on top of it, and that credit spread can be on the far side or the near side, depending on how you want to adjust your risk, where the short strike of that credit spread or debit spread, depending on what side you put it on, is the same short strike as the underlying butterfly, and the long strike is the same strike as the long strike on whatever side that you put it on. So it's like just plopping on another vertical. Now, what does that do for us? Well, one thing that it does is it can take a broken wing fly that is kind of lopsided and then turn it into something that looks like a symmetrical butterfly with much better characteristics than a symmetrical butterfly, in that it will have much more premium and less risk. And so from our point of view, what that means is that the T0 profit curve will be flatter and it will grow faster. So that's really what it does for it. Now, it's more complex, so it takes a little time for people to wrap their heads around what's actually happening. But the unbalanced butterfly also has an additional benefit in that extra vertical that is lapped on top of it, you could use that as a tool somewhere in the course of the day if it had gained enough profit to remove it and then remove more risk from the butterfly itself. That's one possibility. So that even if, let's say that price came towards your butterfly, but then it stalled, but the vertical on top of it had achieved almost all of the profit that it could potentially get, you could take that off because now it is fully used all of its juice. And then if price moved away, you've now secured or realized some profit, so that that your original butterfly no longer poses perhaps any risk at all. So there's another idea. So I'm only introducing these things, now in just conceptually, so that you understand the three different types of butterflies that we use and why we might use them. The unbalanced, we're probably going to use more often in this low volatility situation. And we'll probably find other places to use it as well. But it's more complex, it's more things, but it's easy to actually put on. In some trading platforms, here's one of the problems. In some trading platforms, they have not yet figured out how to do an atomic transaction where you can put the entire either broken wing butterfly or unbalanced butterfly on in just one single transaction. Like, I'm speaking specifically of Tastyworks. I'm not sure why they haven't been able to figure this out. It's not a complex mathematical or programmatic problem, but I would imagine that there's a lot of infrastructure things behind the scenes that they would have to make happen in order for it to, and also updates into their program, their GUI, to be able to support this, although it seems like it could already support it. I don't know what's taking them so long to implement that. So for whatever reason, implementing these things on Tastyworks, if that's your broker of choice, is much more difficult because you have to put them on and leg on or leg into these strategies, which is not desirable. You would much rather, well, it's not undesirable. It's not totally undesirable, but it's less desirable. It's easier, especially if you're new to this game, to just put on the strategy, choose it in a pick list, and then just click and say confirm, and then hopefully it will fill. That's much easier than piecing it together by adding this leg, then that leg, then this leg, But as you become more and more familiar with the strategies that we're using, as you become more skilled in your execution, those problems won't be problems anymore. So it won't matter what platform you're on. You'll be able to execute those, even with the limitations that they have. So there's that. It's just that right now it's not that easy, and it would be better if they just came up with the functionality, right? But you can't force them to do what they don't want to do, or what they're struggling to do. I would say that I wouldn't say that they don't want to do it, but I would venture to guess, as a group, if we got all the Tastyworks people together and started petitioning Tastyworks with this need, damn well that they would accelerate the development of that capability. I know it for a fact. That's what would happen. The problem is that people don't actually do that sort of thing. They don't call up and think that they can petition a software company to change their software. But you can. And if you want to do that, we can organize something and get them to change. Right? And it makes sense because the guy who started Tastyworks is the same guy who started Thinkorswim, and they have that capability. So he's gone through this exercise, maybe he didn't go. Well, while he was there, I'm sure he went through this exercise and had developers there that developed it for Thinkorswim. And why now they can't do it on Tastyworks is beyond me, unless they've chosen a platform and a broker that presents some sort of boundary or fence to get over. That's the only thing I can think of. But it doesn't matter to us because these are minor inconveniences. They're inconveniences for most of you because you're so unfamiliar with doing this sort of thing or working with options. And also, if you make a mistake, it can really cost you. So if you're going to do it, you want to be able to do it with absolute confidence, because once you have the strategy on, there's nothing to worry about, because once the strategy's on, you're safe. You have this wonderful risk to reward profile, and you don't have to worry about anything. The problem is that the time of actually putting it together, if you don't understand what you're doing and you go off and just make a stupid little mistake, it could be difficult to recover from that mistake. Not impossible, and not impossible if you have a good mitigation strategy too. See, this is really what I'm really talking about when the difference between this service and any other service. When you enter into a trade or any kind of position where you're taking your hard-earned money and you're putting it at risk, you should have or feel like you have mastery over that. Now, what does that mean, to have mastery over that position or trade that you put on? Does it mean that you're able to push that button and then put it on and then push another button and take it off? That you are expert at pushing the button? No. That's, of course, it means that you are expert at doing that, but it's way, way, way beyond that. You need to understand all the different components of it and what you would do in the event of something that goes wrong. And that's something that could go wrong could be wide and varying. For instance, it could be losing your power like I did on Wednesday. Now that presents a whole set of problems that you need to be able to come to grips with and have mastery over. Why? Well, let's suppose that you're in the middle of putting one of these trades on and power goes off, and you have no idea the state of the execution of your trade. What are you going to do? What would you do? It's a really simple question. What would you do? Can anybody tell me? What would you do if in the middle of a trade, in your execution, let's say you hit confirm, and you don't know if it went on or not because the power went off right then and there? What would you do? Not only do you need to know what you would do, it should be so automatic what you would do that it would be of no consequence, no issue. You would just do it, and the problem would be solved. Let me just give you a little hint on what you might do. First of all, you would have to be already prepared for events like that, whether it's a power outage or a fat finger mistake, which is what most people do, or just a dumb mistake and recognizing that you made a dumb mistake, or a misstep that maybe you didn't recognize until it became an emergency and you had to recognize and then know what to do. A distraction, that happens a lot. Like, the wife calls you or something. And you got to answer the call, right? Power outage. Cat, ran across the keyboard. I mean, so many things can happen. And in one of those disruptions, you need to know exactly what you would need to do in order to remedy the situation, to get it back to a safe position. See, if you were at that level, and I'm not saying that you need to be there right away. It just means that you need to practice it. And that's the key to everything that we do. We are learning a strategy, and not just one strategy, actually 3, 4, 5 different strategies that are all related. So it's not like they're, completely different. They're all in the same family of strategies, the butterflies I'm talking about, and premium collection. But you need to understand how they work and why they work and what we're trying to achieve. You need to understand your platform and have mastery over that platform. You need to have a mitigation strategy. You need to have alternative ways to get a hold of your broker. So besides your computers, if the power goes out, maybe the very first thing I would say is, well, one way you could protect yourself from your power going out is you could have a battery backup, also known as an uninterruptible power supply, a UPS. I've got a couple of computers in front of me here, and I've got 2 separate UPSs, of which both of those computers are on, including my router and my modem to the internet. So even if I lose power, a lot of times you lose power, but you don't lose internet, right? That happens. So that even if I lost power, I still have my internet. And my computer's up, and it gives me time to be able to unwind what I was doing or safely bring the systems down and wait for the power to come back. Then, of course, another mitigation strategy might be an alternative way to get to your broker, right? So what would be those alternatives? Well, let's say that it was just a single system that goes down and it just, blue screen of death or something like that happens. Of course, if you have a Mac, you never have to worry about that problem. But you have a system that just goes down. What do you do then? Well, you should have alternative systems that you can go to. In my case, I have 2 computers. They're completely redundant. Now, I'm not always showing my trading platform on both, but I could bring up my trading platform on another in a moment's notice and be right back up and running if one of those systems went down. If both of them went down, what would I do? Well, I could go to an iPad or my phone, and I can get onto the mobile version of the trade and then handle it that way. What if that went down or that didn't work? Well, there is a different problem. Hopefully your mobile phone, maybe just the app went down and you can at least call your broker. Or you can go to a coffee shop if there's power there and call your broker and ask them to unwind a trade for you just to keep you safe. I'm just saying that no matter what happens, you should have a disaster recovery strategy for it. And at what level, right? Now, I was just giving you the worst possible case scenario, but normally what happens is that you just make a dumb mistake, what I call a fat finger mistake, which I am prone to do because I've got, enormous hands for my size. And, my fingers sometime hit the wrong key because I'm not a touch typist either. Although I can type pretty fast as long as I'm looking at the keys. But they're fat and they're big, and so sometimes I make a mistake. And because I'm not looking up, I don't see what I'm doing all the time. And I can make a mistake like that, and I often make mistakes like that. But I limit, I know what my limitations are, and I choose when I'm typing and how I'm entering information when I'm doing that to try to reduce the problem. This is what I'm talking about: mastery of your execution environment and mastery of the trade. It's not, when I say mastery, some of you might conjure up, oh man, I've got to just learn all this book knowledge and understand the Greeks and understand the math behind it. And I'm saying that's bullshit. You don't need to understand, quite frankly, you don't need to understand any of that. You don't need to have an academic level knowledge of any of that at all to do this trade successfully. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that the person who actually has a feeling for these trades and an innate understanding of how these systems work when they put on the trade is much better prepared to make profit on a consistent basis than somebody that has been trading for years and years and years and understands all the Greeks and all the math and all this other stuff, all this intellectual baggage that is preventing them from actually doing the trade. In fact, that is my number one challenge as a service operator, and that is to reprogram all the crap that you guys have learned or accumulated over the years that are preventing you from actually putting these trades on. So mastery is something very different than what you're probably thinking about. Mastery is a more innate understanding of what this trade is about. It is about understanding what the market profile is, right? And what those bumps really mean and how they behave. Now, you don't have to know all the math behind creating those bumps. You just have to know, oh, there's a bump there and there's the edge, and when the price hits that, it usually bounces off of it. Igor says, lucky for me, I don't know anything. Yeah, and I'll tell you that you are my favorite type of student or underling or customer, because I don't have to reprogram you. Reprogramming somebody that has gone through decades of losing or doing it wrong is the worst. And you've probably noticed that I've had a few people that have come into the service that I've had to get rid of, because they thought that they were going to come in here and share their knowledge and show us how to do it better. I don't want someone like that, because they don't know shit. And they're destructive to everybody else that's trying to actually learn something. Raj says, I've rolled back everything I learned at least 20 years. You know, and a lot of people are realizing that they come to the service that, you know, I'm stripping away all the crap that you don't need to know and focusing on what you do need to know. But that doesn't mean that you can just strip away everything, you know, or what it really means is that you have to take on an understanding of what's important and then become a master of that, and understand that you can never really be a true master of any of this stuff. And that's why we do the continuous improvement process. That's why we practice this every week. And we try to get better and better and better. And that includes myself. You know, I am not a master of this stuff. I think Chris W. calls me a wizard on my call sometimes. And that may seem that way. But it's only because I've been doing it a lot longer, and I developed the process of doing it, and I've been practicing it, and so I appear better. But any of you can learn to do what I do when it comes to the overall market analysis. It's not that hard. Some of you will get better at it than others. Some of you won't get good at it at all, and maybe you always need a little bit of help, but you should always be striving to get better at it. Others will exceed anything that I could ever dream of doing. So that is what this service is about. And while I've got you here, and even if you're not here right now, and if you're watching this video later today, if you're a trial member, we're getting near the end of the month, and if your trial is anywhere near that 4 weeks, I would encourage you to sign up. Someone had asked me yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, I think it was during my podcast. You know, am I considering raising the price of the membership? And immediately I said no. But I want you to know, right now it's not in my mind. But it's growing on me only because the service is becoming more and more valuable. More and more people are getting onto it. I am draining the other services from their customers. They're coming here and seeing the difference. And so what we're providing here is something that is very valuable, and it's worth way more than what I charge. So I guess what I'm saying is sign up as soon as you possibly can. I'm not thinking of, you know, increasing price right now, but I might. All right. I don't know if there are any questions that we have here. Let's see. Very cool. Okay. So let me see if I can no questions? Let's see. What is the cost of the service? The cost of the service is pretty simple. There's a 4-week trial. It's $20 a week for 4 weeks. After the end of 4 weeks, the trial ends. You don't get billed anymore, but you don't get access to the service unless you decide to become a member. And if you decide to become a member, then I will rebate the cost of the trial towards the membership. And there are 2 ways that you can become a member. You can do a monthly or a yearly. The monthly has a small upfront cost plus a monthly payment, $64 a month. The yearly is just an initial one-time payment. Both of those, you would subtract the $80 from it. The yearly ends up being about 25% less than doing the monthly. The reason why I do that upfront cost, and the reason why I do a 4-week trial and charge for the trial, is that during that 4 weeks, you're going to get an incredible education that you have never gotten before, and it will be worth many, many, many times the $80 that you pay in that 4 weeks. So I have to charge for it, right? But then when you take on the monthly, I don't want you to just, come in and then pay a couple of months and then screw, because I've invested a lot in you. That's why I have that small upfront fee for the monthly. For the yearly, you just pay it all up front and you get the benefit of a discount. All right. It looks like the internet is having a little bit of a problem here. Let's see. Igor is saying, I might have a problem with brokers. Are there any that accommodate us in Eastern Europe, Serbia? Yeah, interactive broker. Interactive broker. All right. So that's all I've got. If you're interested in learning more about the unbalanced and the broken wing and the butterfly and how we use that and why they are, without a doubt, the best strategies that you could possibly imagine for collecting premium, particularly on the very last day of expiration, then, if you're already a trial member or a member, I'm going to continue to improve the course that will talk about that in greater and greater detail. But we will be practicing it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you miss a trade or you just flub up a trade, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. That's why we put on so little risk. There's 3 opportunities every week. We are not in it here to try to make some sort of income, and if you miss one, you're done for. What we're looking for is trying to grow our accounts in leaps and bounds. All right. That's all I've got to say. And I want to thank you very much for coming out on this Saturday. It's been great. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. The trading starts again on Sunday evening because that's when the futures opens at 6 p.m. And if I don't see you then online, I will see you Monday morning. Again, any questions? No questions? All right. Thank you all. And peace to you.